What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports and you're watching our college football channel. We're going to give you the top 10 most underrated teams heading into the 2021 college football season in this video. There are a lot of teams that I think could be on this list, more than 10 really, but I tried to narrow it down to the 10 teams that I thought were really being underrated for whatever reason. Maybe people are looking at last year and looking at the record from last season and not recognizing that these teams are going to be much better this year, or teams that maybe are just forgotten in their division race. You know, some divisions you just kind of think that, well, this team's going to win this division, and then you forget about this other team. Things like that. So we're talking about teams that are really just underrated based off of what I've seen so far this off season. And we're going to do the top 10 most overrated teams as well. That'll come tomorrow. That list was a little bit harder. I don't really think there's a lot of teams that are being overrated this year. But I do think there are a lot of teams that are being underrated, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So we're going to start with number 10, and that is LSU. LSU was just 5-5 last season. A lot of people kind of thinking that the run's over for LSU. They had the great year in 2019 with Joe Burrow. Now this team's just going to be an average team in the SEC, or you know, upper tier of the SEC, but not really going to challenge. Everyone's talking about Texas A&M in the SEC West. They're the team that can challenge Alabama. Maybe this is their year. And I think a lot of people are forgetting about LSU. LSU was really young last year. They had some injuries. They had some guys opt out. You know, they had some unexpected things happen to them. But the talent is there for LSU. Miles Brennan goes down with the injury. Now you've got Max Johnson in there who got some experience. And so you've got two guys at quarterback. You saw some young guys really emerge for them last season and become really superstar type players. Now those young guys are going to be a year older. You got a new group of freshmen coming in, and this is going to be one of the most experienced LSU teams that we have seen maybe, I don't know, in a long time. So they've got a lot of experience coming back, and I believe LSU could be the second best team in the SEC, or at least in the SEC West this year, not necessarily Texas A&M, who's the team that I think everyone's kind of picking. So I think, again, LSU, a team that's being underrated heading into 2021. At number 9, we've got Miami. Why is Miami on this list? This is a team that I think everyone's got in their top 25. But I do think that people are overlooking the Hurricanes. Everyone is pointing to North Carolina. North Carolina is the team in the Coastal. North Carolina is the team that might could beat Clemson this year. It's all about North Carolina. Don't forget about Miami. Miami is a team that I think also will have a say in that division. They bring back a ton of production. Really, all they lost was Brevin Jordan at tight end and their top 2 defensive ends. That's it. Everyone else is back. This is an experienced team. It's a team that will go into year 2 under Rhett Lashley on offense. De'Aaron King, if he's back and healthy, you've got probably a top 10 quarterback on your team. So yes, Miami has a lot going for them. I think they can challenge North Carolina in that Coastal Division. I know last year's game wasn't close, but it'll be a different year. And I think Miami is a team you cannot overlook in that Coastal Division. This is a team that I think deserves some recognition. I know you, again, talking about that 8-3, they got blown out by North Carolina. They lose their bowl game, but it's a new year. This will be an experienced team, and I think a really good team in Miami. Number 8 is Washington. Washington is a team that is not really getting talked about a whole lot. I think people are starting to come around on this team more and more. We're starting to see them in some preseason top 25s. But it's all about Oregon. The Pac-12 North is all about Oregon. Is Oregon the team out of the Pac-12 that can make the college football playoff? Oregon, you know, they're going to win the North, but can they win the Pac-12 championship? It's really all been about Oregon, and I think people overlook Washington. Washington is a team that I think can challenge Oregon. This may be the best defense in the Pac-12 this year. They're absolutely loaded on that side of the ball. The offense, I think, will be solid. You return your starting quarterback. And again, this was a 3-1 team last season. I know they didn't get to play a ton of games. If they had got to play things out, they might have gone to the Pac-12 championship instead of Oregon. So again, look out for Washington this year. Don't sleep on them in the Pac-12 North. And we stay in the Pac-12 for number 7. That is Utah. Utah, a 3-2 record last season, got to play 5 games, and it's another team that I think people are just kind of forgetting about. Utah is one of those teams that is good pretty much every year. They're not always, you know, I'm not talking about top 10, but they're usually a top 25 team around that every single year. And last year, I think they were just kind of forgotten because, again, it was a wacky season, especially in the Pac-12. Didn't get to play many games. And so I think people just kind of forgot about Utah. This is, again, one of the more consistent programs in college football, and I really like what they have coming back, and I really like what they did in the transfer portal. especially with Charlie Brewer coming over at quarterback, a guy that has proven himself at Baylor. You know, a couple of years ago, they had a great season with him as their starting quarterback. So you've got options there. You're also talking about a team that won their last 3 games. They beat Oregon State, Colorado, and Washington State. I know those aren't great teams, but you even go before that, they only lost to Washington by 3. So again, this is a good football team. Utah is a team that I think you cannot sleep on in that Pac-12 South. I've got them here at number 7. Staying in the Pac-12 South at number 6, we've got Arizona State. And again, people are going to look at this record. They were 1-2 last season. They only got to play 3 games. And you look at that and you think, yeah, Arizona State, what are we talking about here? This is not a team that's going to challenge. This is a very experienced team coming back. Jaden Daniels now enters his 3rd season. And Herm Edwards has already proven it with Arizona State. He came in that first year. They beat Michigan State. Have had good seasons really under him. And I think this could be a year that they could challenge in the Pac-12 South. Everyone's talking about USC, just like with Utah we were just talking about. No one's really talking about Utah. Everybody's talking about USC. Arizona State only lost by 1 point to USC last year. They lost to UCLA by a touchdown. They beat Arizona 70-7 in their final game. Again, only played 3 games, but they have so much coming back. I mean, this is maybe the most experienced team as far as returning production goes in the Pac-12 this year. Jaden Daniels back at quarterback, a head coach that has proven that he can get this team to do better than you might think. Remember, they beat Oregon a couple of years ago in a big upset. So watch out for Arizona State. I think this team could really be a sleeper team in that Pac-12, and no one really is talking about them. Now, I did see a top 25 poll recently. I can't remember who it was. It may have been ESPN's updated top 25, and they did have Arizona State ranked. So I think people are starting to recognize that this is a team that is going to be a real contender in the Pac-12 South. And again, we're going to stay in this division. I really think everyone is assuming that USC is going to win the Pac-12 South, and they're overlooking these other teams. I think this is going to be a big-time race in the Pac-12 South. We're not going to talk about Colorado in this video, but I think that they could also maybe get into that conversation. They were in first place in the Pac-12 South at one time last year. UCLA, another team that I think can challenge potentially in that division. They were just 3-4 last season, but they did get to play 7 games. Again, all conference games, of course. And they lost some close games. You go back to that season, lost to USC by 5, lost to Stanford in double overtime, lost to Oregon by 3, lost to Colorado by 6. All of their losses were one-possession losses, and 2 of their 3 wins were double-digit wins. So this is a team that was better than their record would suggest. Chip Kelly is starting to get things going there. Thompson Robinson back at quarterback. A lot to like if you're UCLA. And again, this is a team that I think is definitely in that conversation, in that race in the Pac-12 South. At number 4, we've got West Virginia. West Virginia was a very quiet, a very sneaky 6-4 last season. I don't think people realize that this was a pretty good team last year. Again, I think everyone just kind of forgot about West Virginia. Neil Brown has done an excellent job coming in there. They've kind of changed the culture, changed how things are there at West Virginia. And again, they went out last year and had a pretty good season, 6-4. They won their bowl game against Army. I know, late in the season they lost to Iowa State. They got blown out. But other than that, they were really competitive in every game they played. They lost to Texas by 4. They lost to Texas Tech by a touchdown. Lost to Oklahoma State by a couple of touchdowns. But they beat Kansas State, TCU. They won those games easily. And so, again, this is a team that I think people are just kind of forgetting about. Doege is back at quarterback. Neil Brown, again, I really like him as a head coach. I like what he's brought to West Virginia. And are they Oklahoma, Iowa State? Are they going to challenge in the Big 12 championship race? No, I don't think so. But I do think West Virginia will challenge for that number 3 spot in the Big 12. Everyone's talking about Texas, TCU, maybe even Kansas State. What about West Virginia? West Virginia is a team, again, that I think might have a chance to be the 3rd best team in the Big 12. Oklahoma State, another team that everyone really likes. Well, West Virginia, keep an eye out for them if they could have a really good year. At number 3, we've got Minnesota. Minnesota, a team that I think people are overlooking. Everyone's talking about Wisconsin and Iowa in the Big Ten West. Maybe even Northwestern because they won it last year. You've even got some that maybe think Nebraska could make a run in that division. What about Minnesota? Remember a couple of years ago, this was a team that everyone really shocked everyone. They were a top 10 type team. had that big win over Penn State. I mean, we're talking about a team that was really, I mean, again, surprised everyone. And then in 2020, it was just a weird year. Tanner Morgan, he took a big step back. I think losing some of his receivers really hurt him there. But we've seen what he's capable of doing at that quarterback spot. They were also really, really young on defense. Those guys will be more experienced this year. I think Minnesota should be in that conversation in the Big Ten West. I believe that division is wide open. I think Wisconsin, Iowa, even Nebraska, Minnesota, I think pretty much everyone has a shot in that division. I think Minnesota has a real good shot. I think they should be in that conversation. Like I said, you go back to last year, they won 2 of their final 3 games. They beat Purdue, they beat Nebraska, and then they lost to Wisconsin in overtime by 3. It was a rough start for them. It was a really bad start. Remember, they got blown out by Michigan, then they lost to Maryland in overtime. But I just think that this team kind of had to grow up a little bit last year. It was maybe a rebuild type year for them in a lot of ways, especially on defense. Now with Tanner Morgan back again, I think he bounces back, and I think Minnesota could be right there in the running in the Big Ten West. At number 2, we've got Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 6-5 last season. Another team that I think people kind of forget about. Yeah, this team had a winning record last season in an all ACC schedule. Well, I think they had the one non-conference game, but other than that, it's a team that early on looked really good. Remember, everyone had them in the top 25. They beat Syracuse, they beat Louisville, but they lost a lot of close games. They lost to NC State by 1 point. They lost to Boston College in overtime. They lost to Miami by just 12. It was just a team that lost a lot of close games, and you look at what they have coming back on defense, they should be really solid. They have a lot coming back on that side of the ball. They pretty much always play good defense at Pitt. And then you look at Kenny Pickett back at quarterback. He's now a really experienced guy for them at that spot. So you would expect him to be a leader for them. You expect the offense to get a little bit better. And again, Pittsburgh is a team that maybe they're not on the North Carolina-Miami level, but I think they have a really good shot to finish 3rd in that division. And if Miami and North Carolina are not quite as good as maybe we're expecting them to be, maybe Pittsburgh does make a run in that division. I think you can't sleep on Pitt in that ACC Coastal Division. But the number 1 most underrated team for 2021, the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky was 5-6 last season. Not a great record, but when we talk about an all SEC schedule, not bad. I mean, that's actually a pretty good record. They lost to Ole Miss by 1 point. They lost to Missouri in a pretty close game. Held Georgia to just 14 points. Yeah, they got blown out by Alabama. That may have been a game where they were missing much players. I can't remember. But they won their bowl game against NC State. This is a quality team, a quality program. Mark Stoops has just done an excellent job at Kentucky. Now, are they good enough to challenge Georgia in the East this year? I don't think so. I think Georgia is clearly the best team in that division. But I do think Kentucky is a team that could be in that conversation for number 2 in that division. Everyone's kind of talking about Missouri as the team. Missouri might be the team to get ahead of Florida and maybe finish number 2 in the SEC East. No one's talking about Kentucky. Kentucky has a chance to be a really good team this year. And like I said, they've proven it now over the last few years that they can be a very quality program. You look at what they have coming back, they're going to be solid on defense. They've got great running backs. Joey Gatewood at quarterback was a big-time recruit. If he can live up to his potential, just think of how good this offense can be, and they're changing things up. They're going to not lean on the run quite as much. If you go back the last few years, it's like they run the ball 80% of the time. They're going to be a little bit more balanced, a little bit more of a pass team this year. And if that works out well for them, they could really surprise some people. And like I said, I think Kentucky could be a team that if it's not Florida, it could be Kentucky that finishes number 2 in the SEC East. And it's a team that I think is really underrated heading into this season. Watch out for the Wildcats. What do you guys think about my list? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who do you think is underrated that maybe I left off? Who do you think is on my list that you think is not underrated? You think, no, I don't think they're underrated. They're not going to be very good. Give me your thoughts on this list and what your list would maybe look like down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.